Hey, Bob.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
So, what's going on? What's up?
Well, I looked at my 360, and one of the things that several people pointed out, including my boss, that I don't speak up enough. I don't, I need to be more assertive.
Now, who's your boss?
Frank.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And Frank's been around, and he's a real strong guy and everything, and he's very assertive. I mean, he's very bold, and he says what he wants to. But that's just not my style. That's not me, I don't know if this 360 is trying to make me into something like Frank or what. But Frank's been there a long time, and he's successful, and he's pretty highly regarded as a leader, And,
But he's not you. I mean, you don't act like that.
Honestly, it's just not
a lot
me.
of people don't even like Frank.
Well, he's successful. I mean, he's risen in the organization, and he's built a long career. I don't know. I think he's doing pretty well.
That's true.
I mean, I don't know if I'll ever have a job like his. But so this sort of thing kind of bothered me. I used to be one of the members of my department, and then I got promoted. And we have a woman in the department, Glenda, who's been doing her job forever, and she's probably the only one who knows how to do this, and she kind of uses that she comes to me and says, if you don't do something with so-and-so, then I'm going to quit, or I'm going to retire. So I don't know what she's back and forth on what she's going to do, and so, that's really hard for me. I mean, I don't know how to deal with her.
I had somebody that worked in my department that was like that before. Yep.
Sucks. Yeah, it sucks.
It
what are you
sucks.
going to do? Yeah.
It sucks.
What'd you do?
Honestly, she pushed me around, and finally I got HR involved, and HR came in and helped with it, and eventually she did retire. She did quit. I mean, I just couldn't deal with her, but.
Yeah, well, that's a thought. I think if I get, my boss is really assertive, Frank is, and if I could get him to talk to her, I think, but he keeps wanting me to do that, and I'm thinking, I used to work with her, and she's tough, and she's older than I am, and she's just kind of a bully, really, and I'd really like to. When you think about me getting him involved and trying to get him to talk to her.
Well, maybe do you think that's what he wants?
He says he doesn't. He says he wants me to do it, but I really don't know how to take that on. And I don't feel comfortable doing that. I just get it makes chills around my spine to think about. I mean, what would I say to her? I either get so mad because I'm so ticked off, it's been going on for so long, that I'd probably blow up, and she would quit, and we don't have anybody to do her job.
Yeah, and then you'd be out of luck.
Then I really screwed things up. Well, or just keep going the way it's going, and really neither one. That's all I can think of is one or the other. And I guess it would really be helpful if I could
come up with.
If you're a coach, maybe you could help me come up with a better approach.
Well, so I mean, do you think you could get HR to get involved for you?
I could try. Yeah, they've been kind of hands off too. They keep saying, well, you should talk to your supervisor. They don't want to get directly involved. I think they're afraid of her too, frankly.
Well, what has happened in the past when you've tried to stand up to her?
Well, I've tried to ask her, I think I tell her, well, you do a great job, you're really valuable here, I'm going to try and reinforce that, and then I try, if there's just one thing that you could do, it would be, just really helpful. If you, and I try to hint that, there's a couple of things I really like, and she just hasn't taken the bait.
Maybe you need to be more direct.
Well, that's what my boss said. That's what all these people said. What do you mean? Glenda, shape up or you're fired. That's direct. Should I do that?
Maybe there's something in between.
Like what?
Well, maybe between, you're fired and just avoiding it altogether.
Yeah, I just don't know quite what's going to work there. It's going to be in between. I mean, I don't know what I could say to her. She won't blow up at me. And if she's mad at me, I mean, she's got a few friends, that probably would just about doom my career more than hers. And she knows how to work people.
Yeah.
And
All right, I'm going to stop you there. That's good. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to go ahead and play this back. I can...
Hey, how are you? All right. What seems to be the problem? Well, there's one thing I'm concerned with.
So I'll pause it there first of all. And so, what seems to be the problem was kind of the way you started that. And so, what impact do you think that might have had on Bob and his willingness to bring that problem to you?
Well, I guess I was, trying to let him know that I would help him with his problem.
Right.
That I would, whatever the problem was, that I'd be there to help him.
Okay. So Bob, how were you feeling at the beginning of this conversation?
I got a problem.
Okay, you felt like you had a
Yeah, I must have
problem.
a problem.
Okay.
We're going to talk about my problems.
Okay. All right. So might help sometimes to start with some just kind of casual conversation just to break the tension a little bit, maybe build some rapport. You want him to feel at ease. This is a challenge sometimes for people to come to you with an issue like this that they might need some coaching on. So just think about maybe a way to set the stage a little bit.
I have heard that before. Sometimes I get too focused on just being productive.
The problem. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Let's go from there.
I got the pieces that answered that. A lot of people, there was kind of a large volume of comment that I got. Assertive, talking to people. My boss said, I'm assertive. Well, I know I've got some. Who's your boss? Frank.
Yeah, so one of the things we say when we're doing the coaching is probably listening is a more effective skill than talking, and you're doing a pretty good job here. I mean, I think he went 30 seconds or so, and then you did have a question of clarification. So what was the impact of that for you,
Well,
Bob?
I didn't think it really mattered what who my boss was, and took it off of me
Right, okay,
and my issue.
okay,
So then I all of a sudden realized, we're talking about my boss and what kind of guy he is and how he would handle this and why doesn't he,
okay,
instead of what I need.
yeah,
And I also noticed she's pretty closed off there with her body language.
yeah,
She says she wants to talk, that's what the words are, but the body says,
yeah.
I'm kind of closed here.
So did you notice that when you were having this conversation in real time, or are you just noticing this when you watch it on the video?
It's more obvious now, obviously. I was trying to think of what I was going to do.
Yeah, you were busy telling your story.
But I did eventually notice that was her posture.
Yeah, okay. So that posture, Kelly, would typically be considered kind of a closed posture, and so that maybe might indicate that you might not be terribly interested in listening to Bob. So what might be a better approach to your posture, do you think?
Well, probably not crossing my arms or legs, and I probably could have put my chair toward him
Yeah,
instead of away.
okay.
Sometimes I may have been, concerned I was too close or something. So
Were you feeling some tension right there about this conversation?
I was, because I think because I do know his boss. I wanted to make sure that that's who I thought it was, and so I was a little concerned. 'Cause he's right. He's a tough guy,
Okay.
tough character.
So this conversation was making you uncomfortable at
A
this
little
point?
bit, a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Good, let's see what happens next.
And Frank's been around, he's a strong guy, and he's very assertive, he's very bold, and essentially that's just not my style, that's not me, it's trying to be something Frank and what, but Frank's been here a long time, and he's successful, he's very
It's not you, I mean, you don't act like that.
it's just,
Like Frank.
well, he's successful.
So what were you trying to achieve there with that comment? What were you thinking?
I I've actually really had some issues with Frank, and I was
Yeah.
wondering if he may have had some of those as well.
Okay.
So kind of wanted to give him an opening for that, but I don't know
Yeah.
if this was the place for that.
So if this is developmental coaching, and you're more concerned with trying to kind of probe Bob's feelings and where he's at, what's a question that you might have asked there, as opposed to giving your insight into your relationship with Frank? What kind of question might you have asked Bob right then?
It may have, if I was interested, I guess, in his relationship, I guess would have been to ask about him
Yeah.
instead of telling him.
Okay, so try that right now. Ask Bob a little bit about his relation. What question would you ask him?
So it's maybe, let's see, maybe something around, you're clear that he's really different than you with your style. How do you guys work together? Maybe ask, do you feel supported by him? You've heard this.
Sometimes I feel supported by him, but sometimes I find him just kind of intimidating. You know, he's so strong and so bold. And as I said, that's not me. So when he wants something done, or he thinks I've screwed up in some way, he just lays it out there. And I find that sometimes I'm even afraid of him a little bit. I'm just that's scary for me.
So I would have found out a lot more.
So
if
what
I'm-
now? So
Okay.
you would have found out a lot more, which is really interesting. And Bob's just kind of, he shared a couple of feelings with you there. So what did you pick up from that answer?
That he's actually intimidated and maybe even a little frightened of
Yeah.
him.
So ask him about that right now.
So actually, you actually feel intimidated and frightened or by him.
Yeah, maybe that's too strong a word, but it'd be hard to push back on Frank. For me, it'd really be, sometimes I don't, I have a different opinion. If I offer it and he says, no, we're not going to do that, boy, then, I'm not going to come back and say, well, let's talk about that some more. I mean, that would just be really hard for me with him. I can do that with other people. But he just kind of closes the door on dialogue, and it's his way or the highway, and that's why I keep thinking if I could get him to talk to Glenda, I think things would probably go, that'd be better for me. It'd be easier. Right now, things are pretty tough.
So we see that just a couple of questions have taken you in really a very different direction here
Yeah.
than your conversation went initially. And to me, when you're doing developmental coaching, it's a little bit, there's no right way to do this, but it's a little bit like you open a door and probe and see if there's something behind that door. And if that doesn't work, you close that door and open up another door. And so I think I like to listen for these key words or really emotive words, and so when he says he's intimidated or afraid of Frank, that's something I want to probe a little bit. I want to look behind that door and see if there's something more to that. So we won't continue this. I want to go back to watching what you did, but you see how two questions took you in a very different direction than the initial conversation, and those are developmental coaching kinds of questions. So let's see where it goes from here, and maybe we'll probe that a little bit more.
Well, I mean, he's a new organization, and he's built a lot of career. He's doing pretty well, I don't know if I'll ever have a job like his. But, yeah, so this is sort of thing that bother me. I used to be one of the members of the department where I got promoted, and we have a woman in the department, Glenda, who's been doing her job forever, and she's probably the only one who knows how to do this, and she kind of uses that she comes to me and says, if you don't do something with so-and-so, then I'm going to quit, I'm going to retire, so I know she's back and forth, and so, that's really hard for me. I don't know how to deal with her.
I had somebody that worked in my department that was like that.
So again, you're kind of taking this back to your perspective here. And so he just said this relationship with Glenda is hard for him and challenging, and he doesn't know what to do with it. So what would you be curious, you know, coaching is a lot about curiosity. What would you be curious about in that comment that Bob just made?
I could ask him what's hard about it. Can you tell me more about what's hard about
Yeah.
the situation? What in particular makes it hard to work with Glenda?
And how did you react to that, Bob?
She gets loud, you know, and the walls aren't that thick, and she's yelling about what she's going to do, and you know, and I would say, well, why don't we talk about this later, you know, and then I don't get back to it, and then the behaviors keep going on, and so, yeah, as soon as she starts really getting loud and kind of boisterous about talking back to me, and I know it, people outside can hear that she's in there yelling at me, and that's not good for morale and stuff, so I just say, well, look, we'll talk. I keep hoping she'll simmer down a little bit, you know, and talk about it later.
Who's giving her permission to do that, Bob?
Well, there are only two of us in the room, so
Yeah.
I guess she and me.
So what could you do about that?
Well, I've tried to ask her to, you know, just lower her voice a little bit, and let's have a, you know, nice, calm conversation here. And I don't feel calm. You're attacking. You're telling me I do something I don't want to do.
Right.
I'm not calm.
Yeah.
Don't tell me to be calm.
Right. So what could you say in response to that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's where I get stuck.
That's where you get stuck.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'd want to probe that more, but you see again how we've taken this kind of away from Frank and Glenda, and now we're trying to have Bob look at some of the
Right.
behavior that he's engaging in. And so, you know, we're not going to solve this. This is just a 6-minute slice in time, but you can see just by asking a few different questions, we're already kind of turning this in a different direction that probably, you know, certainly Glenda's behavior is not always acceptable, and Frank can be quite dominating, but, you know, Bob's got some responsibility here that we want to help him address as well, but you see how we can turn it that way.
Yeah, he can see what his choices are too.
Yeah.
But right now, Glenda has all the power.
It does seem that way. Yeah, let's continue the conversation.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks.
What'd you do?
You know, honestly, she.
Now that's a trap question. So he asked you, you know, what did you do? And I think later in this he's going to ask you, what's the solution? Help me solve my problem. And so there was a great article in the Harvard Business Review a few years back about managers taking the monkey on their back. And I've actually seen these coaching conversations go in such a way that within 2 minutes, you've taken, the person who's doing the coaching takes the whole problem on themselves, and they agree to walk out and solve the problem. And the whole idea behind developmental coaching is we want to give Bob some tools so that he can go be more successful in dealing with these very strong personalities, but maybe some tools that would help him. But, you know, for you to solve it or say what you did last time or fall into that trap, you know, is not going to help him. And so a couple times he asks you, and you know, how might you respond to that when he says, well, what should I do about this?
Well, I think what I hear you saying is instead of me telling him what to do, is to help him think of what his options are in that situation. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think some
Okay.
probing questions like the ones we've tried to
Yeah.
ask him here, and so having him consider what the alternatives are and what his options might be for addressing that problem. Because if you are solving the problem, is that helping with his development?
No, I guess not. Yeah, just helping with this issue doesn't help him know how to do it in the future.
Right. And so that's
Yeah.
management coaching. Sometimes we do have to, as leaders, we do have to solve problems for other people. But this is really
Yeah.
not a problem. This is a problem that ultimately Bob's going to have to figure out how to solve.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Does that make sense, Bob?
Yes. Yeah.
Not an easy
Unfortunately-
one. Not an
unfortunately,
easy
yeah.
one. No, it's not. It's not easy. It's a challenge.
Pushed me around, and finally I got HR involved, and HR came in and helped with it, and you know, eventually she did retire. She did quit. I mean, I was just couldn't deal with her, but
Yeah, well, that's a thought. I think, you know, think if my boss is really assertive, right? So if I could get him to talk to her, I think, he keeps wanting me to be happy. I'm thinking, you know, I used to work with her, and she's tough, and she's older than I am, and she's just kind of a bully, you know. I really think about getting him involved. Getting him to talk.
Well, maybe
So what would you?
I really wanted you to meet Glenda so you could talk to her a little bit.
Yeah, help out with that. So wait, was there anything in his response there that you got curious about? He made a statement that was pretty interesting in there that I think I'd want to pick up on. Did you hear anything in that?
The bully?
No, well, I mean, I think that's one thing. You might want to ask him to define what does bullying look like for him. Help me understand that. That's very good. He also said, Frank wants me to solve this problem.
Mm.
So why do you think Frank wants you to solve the problem, Bob?
Well, he says to round out my abilities as a leader, I really should be able to handle somebody like Glenda.
Yeah. Do you agree with that?
I understand it, but I think there are a lot of other leadership qualities that, you know, I mean, nobody's perfect.
No,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, there's going to be a situation for everybody that's going to really be tough. So,
So is that a challenge you'd be willing to try to work on?
well, I need tools. I mean, you talk about tools. I need tools. I don't have a clue how to go about this. As I said, I see one extreme or the other.
Yeah.
Both of them have dire consequences, and there must be something in the middle, but I don't know how to find it.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm at a loss.
So you're at a loss.
So yeah, I mean, if I had some way to envision how that might go,
Yeah.
yeah, I was hoping Kelly would give me that. But,
Yeah. Have you seen anybody who's been successful at that in your organization?
there are people who seem to be able to be pretty direct and just kind of set down expectations. And
Yeah.
I actually, you know, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking of a situation way back when I took over this guy who he was also very intimidating. He was bigger than me and he was older than me. It was my first supervisory job.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was pretty direct with him, and he came back to me and he literally said, "I'll meet you in the parking lot and I'll bust your arm."
Okay. So you've had some
So,
bad
that
experience
was
with this in the
scary.
past.
Yeah, he didn't.
Yeah.
But
That's good.
I actually was successful in firing him. It turned out he was stealing from the company as well.
Okay.
But that made an impression on me.
I'll bet.
And
Yeah.
so I don't want to be with people coming in and going postal and all that sort of stuff. You know,
Yeah.
I worry about some of these people.
Yeah. So you can see again, Kelly, the idea still is not to solve this problem, but you can see, I've asked Bob now 2 or 3 questions, and now we're kind of getting, I think, more to the heart of the problem, which is some experiences he's had in the past and maybe how those are impacting him today. So it's not really about Frank and it's not really about Glenda. When you're doing developmental coaching, it's almost always about the person that you're working with, and so
Got it.
I think we're getting a little bit closer to that. But
I've
let's see.
sure learned a lot more about him just from your questions than
Yeah.
from my
Yeah, so that's
what
good.
I thought was helping him.
Yeah, and you were helping, but that's good.
I think that's what he wants.
He says that he wants me to do it, but you know, I really don't know. It's in conflict. It's children on my spot. What would I say to her? I either get so mad because I'm so ticked off, so I'd probably blow up, and she wouldn't quit. We're not even going to do her job. And yeah, or then I don't see. But or we can just keep going with it. So it's all I can do.
Right.
So if you're a coach, maybe you can help.
Well, so, I mean, do you think you can get HR to get involved with you?
So there was that trap again. He said, "You're the coach. I want you to help me," and so you offered a solution for him. And so again, he's kind of seeing this as a dichotomous problem. I'm either going to, have this big blow up, or I can just ignore it. And so I might explore: are there some other options that are somewhere in the middle that might work for you? But again, for you to solve the problem for him doesn't really help him in terms of developing his
Right.
leadership. And so it's an easy
Mhm.
out, and it's easy to do when you're a manager
Mhm.
and a leader to think I'm supposed to solve all these problems. But Bob's got to come to grips with kind of what's going on here with these two challenging relationships and strategies that are going to work for him. And so that's the developmental coaching piece, is helping him find those strategies. And again, this is a pretty complicated problem with a fairly long history to it. We wouldn't expect to solve it in 6 minutes.
Mhm.
But even some of the questions that we've been using to probe this, I think in just a couple minutes we found out more about what the challenge is with Bob,
Definitely.
just based on these kind of probing questions than you knew starting at the beginning of this process. So it's amazing what you can find out with just a few good questions.
Yeah, I think I definitely felt nervous, like I should help him solve it. And
Yeah.
I see what you're saying is helping him solve it instead of giving him the answer.
Correct. Perfect. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, they've been kind of hands-on too. They keep saying, well, you should probably hear some of that. They don't want to get rid of it. I think they're afraid.
Well, what has happened in the past when they tried to stand up for her?
Well,
That was a really good question. So that was a great question. You were curious about that. And now you're going to get to some of the history maybe that's led to getting him in the place that he's at now. But that was really well done. And you see how you're going to get a good response from that.
Tell her she did a great job. Now you over here, I'm going to try to reinforce that. And I took the, if there's just one thing that you could do, helpful, if and try to think that, couple things I really want. And I should still think.
Maybe you need to be more direct.
What?
So, again there. So what question might you ask instead of giving advice there? Did you pick up on something? He said that he's been hinting.
Yeah.
So what would you be curious about there?
What has he been hinting about?
Yeah, how do you leave those hints?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but how do you hint to somebody that this is an unacceptable situation?
Well, I try to tell her all the good things she's doing,
Yeah.
and then I'll just say there's this one thing I'd like for you to stop doing, or something like that, and she'll come back and say, I'm doing great, I'm doing great, I've been here longer than you have,
Right.
nobody knows my job like me, you just told me I'm doing great,
Yeah.
so don't go on with this hinting, don't start telling me what I need to change. I think I'm on a good track here, and I'm planning to do that until I retire.
She sounds pretty tough.
She's tough.
She's tough.
She reminds me of my mother, for
Yeah.
God's sakes.
Oh, now we're into mother issues.
Yelling at me, just yelling at me all the time.
Yeah, I hear you.
Wow.
Shake up or you're fired. That's
Maybe
correct. Should I do that?
there's something in between.
Like what?
That was good. Kelly, that was good. You said, maybe there's an alternative in between. You threw it back to him.
Maybe between, you're fired and just avoiding it altogether.
Yeah, I just don't know quite what it's gonna work. Maybe in between, I don't know what I can say to her. She won't blow up at me. And if she's mad at me, and she's got a few friends, they probably would do my career more than hers. She knows how to work people. All right, I'm gonna stop you.
All right, so Kelly, that was a challenging one. So Bob, you and I will have more opportunities to explore this in our coaching sessions, and we'll try to talk about some tools that you can use with Glenda and potentially with Frank in dealing with those. And Kelly,
Well, that's great.
good learning, I think, for you there. So what's your takeaway from this as a coach? Kelly, what do you want to try to do differently, perhaps in some of these conversations that you have back at work?
I think I get really sometimes nervous that I need to give them an answer,
Yeah.
and I also know that I tend to be very focused. I want to get right to the problem, so I really saw what you said about just taking a few minutes to just check in or talk to them, but I really steer away from feelings and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'd like to ask more questions and not talk about myself. Sometimes I think that's a way for them to know that I understand what they're saying, but it really does take the focus off of them and it
Yeah.
puts it on me.
Yeah.
I could really see that.
Very good insight. So we'll talk in our sessions about how you're able to do that, but I think that's a great learning insight for you.
Thanks.
Okay.
That was helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good job, Bob and Kelly. Okay, who wants to go next?
More, I think I could ask more questions, and keep people, just really keep it narrow on the individual, more narrow than I have. I think, in that short period of time, I could do even more of that still, and so they get, perhaps an opportunity for more insights into the feedback they've gotten and how that might be playing out for them as leaders. I think one thing that I wanted, and I think you're trying to do this, was in the, you said, oh, I had a problem like that, and I went to HR. You were trying to connect with me, and I was looking for some validation of my difficulty. This must be hard for you,
Yeah.
or something like that, and
Yeah,
I think
that's
that
good feedback.
would have helped me.
Yeah,
Not solve it, but just know that
Yeah.
you were here to work with me, and you understood that this was not just an intellectual problem. This was something
Yeah.
that I'm really struggling
So
with.
one of the things you can encourage people to do is when you sense an emotional reaction, to label that and acknowledge it, and to say, this sounds really frustrating for you, Bob. Tell me
Yeah.
more about that.
Yeah, because I'm frustrated with the situation, obviously.
Yeah. So how about from the coaching perspective? I think probably I interjected myself more into the debrief than maybe you had, and I will role play with people during the debrief. What would happen if you took it in this direction instead of that direction? Because what I normally find is the problem is about a person, it's not about the issue. And so management coaching is trying to solve an issue, developmental coaching is trying to figure out, everybody knows the answer. Bob knows what he should do. I gotta go talk to Glenda. So what's holding him back from doing that? And that's really what developmental coaching is trying to get at. And so I would say, because this was a, role play, more often than not, I would find, if I asked some of those probing questions, somebody would probably say, it really is me. I just need to tell Glenda, this is not acceptable. I know she's valuable. I know she's been here a long time, but we just can't tolerate this. It's bad for the culture. It's bad for the organization. I need to step up and take ownership of this problem. I mean, you didn't do that because it wasn't a real problem, but most people will actually, even in this 30-minute role play and debrief, most people will actually say, it's me. And I should be doing this. And so that we didn't have that kind of breakthrough that we might typically get, but it's amazing what you can do with developmental coaching and just a few pointed questions for people. At the very end, I'll say, so everything we do here is about taking skills back to your work environment. What's your one takeaway from this afternoon? And I have all 4 people do that typically at the end
Of the whole thing.